Good morning, Tavis. And how are you from the center of Plano?
The center of Plano is treating me well this morning, sir. And now
Good.
it'd be great to get some rain. I mean, we had like a little drizzle over the last couple of days, but that's about it,
Yeah,
you know.
it is. It's down to rain. Of course, Bandad here, of all the
Oh,
weeks for it to start
Bandad.
raining, they have this last week of practice before state, and they need all the reps they can get. So the good thing is their large competition is also getting rained on, so everyone will be in the same boat. But
Ah,
for those of you that are out there that don't know this, there are actually national websites that rank high school marching bands. Hornrank.com is the main one. And
hornrank.com.
Hornrank. Let me look up
Okay.
Hornrank real quick. I'll tell you because you're going to be blown up by you'll be blown away by this. Hornrank. And so I didn't know about this until I was at probably a
Don't
junior
fat
dad or
finger
something
that.
like that. You know?
Don't fat finger that.
Yeah. Yeah. Got to be careful when you're typing that one in. So hornrank.com ranks the top marching bands in the country. Number one is a band out of Indiana, Avon, then Carmel, then Vandegrift, which is down in Austin. So Vandegrift beat us at state last year. Avon and Carmel beat us at our national competition that we go to once every 4 years, but they live right down the road and they're there every year and they're very comfortable with that competition. So little asterisks there. But Hebron High School is number 4 in the country. We were actually number
Woohoo.
1 all of last year, but when we lost those competitions, we dropped to number 4. So we are the number 4 high school marching band in the country. But what's crazy, you go down, there's one in Missouri, one in Florida. Number 7 is Flower Mound. Number 10 is Marcus. So
Wow.
3 of the top 10 marching bands in the country are in the same school
Louisville
district.
ISD.
Louisville ISD. And then Vandegrift is down in Austin. So you look at the weather, and Flower Mound and Marcus and Hebron will all be rained on this week, and Vandegrift will also be rained on. And none of us have indoor practice facilities. Capel actually has an indoor practice facility, but we do not. So you learn all these things as a band dad. And last week I got all the most reps I've had so far in the big rig. I think I posted some pictures. If I'll make sure. Karen took some pictures of me. Like I was going off to my first day of kindergarten. She came up to the semi truck in the big rig, and I'm leaning out, all nervous looking. But yep, it went well. Drove on I-35, so it's pretty nuts to think that about 3 weeks into having my permit to drive a
Yes.
semi truck, I can load one down and drive down to Duncanville on I-35. So we
It's
got the
amazing.
reps, and then we will be going to San Antonio. I will be going on down to San Antonio on the big
Oh my
rig
goodness.
here in a couple weekends. So what's going on with you? I know,
Exciting.
dude. I know what's going on. Okay, I told you the other day. I need to bring a bundle of sage and
Uh-huh.
burn it at your freaking marina because that y'all had a tornado
Ah,
come through there. Y'all have had
yeah.
another little something happen in the last year. They're rebuilding stuff all over the place. It's a beautiful place. We were just there for a car show, an antique boat show. And sure enough, the other day, y'all had some sort of fire.
Yeah. Last Thursday,
What happened?
an electrical fire. Just it was coincidental that people were in the restaurant working, setting up for basically a Halloween Halloween celebration called Fear on the Pier, and it's a sponsored event by the marina and the restaurant. Couples in on that. So the restaurant just opened up. This past summer, so they were very excited because this is off season. So this is kind of one of the biggest events going on at the restaurant until Christmas time. So they're in there blowing up balloons, and then all of a sudden they heard a big pop, and they go outside, and there's flames coming up from um, an area just it's adjacent or it's next to the restaurant. It shares the same building, but it's not the actual restaurant. Flames were coming up, and they went and tried to put them out with an extinguisher, and nothing was working. It turns out the way that marinas are wired is that the cables run up underneath all the floating dock areas. So this is a floating marina, and then the cables run up underneath. And I believe this was a section of old cables, possibly. And over time, they're just laying on top of this aluminum framing, that's floating. And over time, it wore thin, and it just wore down to a point where the wires basically touched and
When you've told Landon before, like,
sparked an
don't
ignition.
jump in the water and swim around here, because
Exactly.
nearby all those boats and all those
Yeah, you have no
electrical.
idea if there's an open circuit, in the
Yeah.
water. So
Wow.
something happened, it sparked, and then it went up in flames, and it looked really, really bad. If you watch the videos or you Google it or any of the news media outfits, it looked really, really bad. Fortunately, most of it was on the exterior of the building, so it didn't penetrate inside the building too much. And the only thing I can contribute that to is possibly, they use this composite. It looks like cedar, but it's a composite-based plastic type material that's on the outside cladding of the building, and then they have the zip form or zip wall sheathing behind it. Construction terms, I know, but anyways, it has this, and it didn't really penetrate through that. So
Yeah.
kudos to those products, because
Quite a commercial.
yeah,
They should have just ran with the whole, I think it's haunted, the spirits are trying to. Then they could have had a great party.
Yeah. Well, I was really, I mean, of course we lost power and everything, and I saw it. I have cameras on my phone, so like 7:00 on Thursday, the cameras went off. Well, the marina had sent out a notice. They were moving some stuff around to secure. Again, this thing's been under construction since the last tornado to really hit us was in 2023, in March of 23. And since then, the marina's been a mess, right? And constant construction, constant moving boats around, a whole 9 yards. So I thought it was just another kind of routine thing. They needed to shut power off in the meantime. Well, that was when the fire happened.
Yeah.
So where the fire was, right behind it, is the main electrical room, which takes all the main power source from Encore into that distribution center, and then the distribution center is through the entire marina. And these are huge, like, cables and home runs. You've seen the cables coiled up on the dock, and they're like 4 inches in diameter, right? And I thought for sure, like, if the fire made it there, we're toast. Like, I have no idea when it's going to be up and running. I have no idea how long it's going to take for them to rebuild if all these home runs got damaged. Fortunately, that was not the case. The fire got put out and extinguished before it reached that point.
Cool.
And we have power back up now. So
yeah. Well, it's a bummer.
But
that place is great, but hey, you're getting a lot of new
anybody that's
stuff.
ever been through a fire in general, I just can't imagine, right?
No.
It's just got to be one of the scariest, most,
I mean, it happens in
weak
an instant.
points in your life,
like
right?
you're,
You just
you're
can't.
cool.
Yeah, it's like, what do you do, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Dad was a firefighter for 14 years, and I just think it's one of those deals where you think you got a handle on it, and like, holy crap, now the curtain, now, we got to go. It's just like,
Yeah.
And there's like, what would you grab? All these philosophical, what would you grab if you're like, I don't think you're really thinking through all that. It's like,
No.
well, we
And
all
I mean, like I said, a buddy of mine was at his slip and saw it happen. He went and grabbed an extinguisher. There's extinguishers hanging up everywhere.
Yeah.
He grabbed an extinguisher and tried, but even when you watch the footage of the fire department, they're hosing it down, and you just see sparks everywhere. I mean, like, you just see flashes and flashes and flashes, because it's electrical fire. So
Wow.
They always say don't fight an electrical fire with water. But I don't know what they used, in a combination of that with water.
I think they have a foam.
I didn't see a lot of foam, so I don't know what they did, but
threw a blanket on it. I'm not sure.
Crazy stuff.
But,
hey, but by the way, your dad, you need to sit down and write all of the things that your dad either owned a business in or accomplished in his life.
We've done this.
I think every week you have a different story of my dad owned this, or my dad owned this company, or
he was a firefighter for 14 years. That was his main career. And then firefighters are on 24 and then off 48. So 24 on, 48 off. So a lot of them have side businesses. And so in that process, you're a young entrepreneurial guy, and you're like,
right.
Okay, I'll try this, I'll try that. But yes, Dad was quite the entrepreneur. He tried a lot of different things, and we do have a book full of business cards of things that he tried. So, but yeah, he was always grinding, trying to figure it out. So,
Amazing.
well, speaking of one of your buddies at the marina, I know this isn't the only reason you have a boat out there, but it does sort of serve as a community, and you have friends, and we've got
Yeah.
listeners out there, and I mean, it's just you know these folks, you know you're seeing them on a regular basis, and you have a lot in common. Well, one of your buddies out there is in construction, called you up. He had a lead on a house, so we got to go walk a house over in Richardson the other day and give a quote. And then right after that, we went and walked another house up in Plano, and are going to give a quote. So I know you've been pretty active with people reaching out, at least wanting to get a number. And we've talked before. You think it's 1 in 20 kind of lands,
Yeah.
but the practice of walking through and seeing, what are we looking at, trying to come up with our rehab number. That process is actually getting more refined, and I feel like we're getting to a point where we can kind of underwrite a deal and do that
Yeah.
fairly fast.
Absolutely. What do you think your biggest takeaway is doing that? I mean, and you've done this with me on several houses in the
Yeah.
past, and you've obviously done it for yourself as well. But anything you get or a takeaway that you have had the last couple ones that
Well,
we've walked, or just the process, or what I do, or anything like that? That
yeah. So I mean, from just an actual technical standpoint, you do a really good job of going through every room, taking a picture, so you can remember sort of this specific house. You always take a
yeah,
picture of the systems, of course, the roof, the water heater, the electrical panel, any sort of foundation thing, so you can make sure that you kind of have a system. You go and from, let's say, you go from left to right. You don't leave out any rooms. Then you go upstairs, and then you go. It is not willy nilly, and which would make some sense, but it would be very easy just to kind of hop around. So then we
yeah,
kind of do that, and then we actually go back through the house and start talking in theory about what could you make it. Hey, this bathroom's over here. This is a little bit weird. Yeah, you could probably open up that wall, but now this is a bigger renovation. Or we could keep these cabinets. No, we're going to have to reface these cabinets, or this is all going to have to come out. And so you kind of start talking about that part of it, so which would add to the renovation cost. And then you start talking about your big systems, but the big takeaway is, and this isn't, this is probably how I would not do it at first. I would want the house. I would be really excited about, man, we're so close. And you're very disciplined about what it's going to take you to do it. And then you always fudge a little bit lower just to give you a buffer. You fudge a
mm-hmm.
little lower on the ARV, you fudge a little bit higher on the reno, just because things happen. And it's not because you're just trying to squeeze these people for every dime. It's that from a business perspective that just stuff happens. And I would probably, go the other way and be like, okay, I think I could do it for, okay, probably 35, but I could probably do it for 30,
Mm-hmm.
or like, hey, I think ARV's 495, but we could maybe push 5, and I might go the other way just to justify picking up the deal. Whereas you're really disciplined, but that comes into play is when I've told you last week, when on the backside, when we're doing open houses and people are walking through, and you're able to do this very consistent look with this, custom paint and nice hardware and nice countertops. I actually represented a flip. I went and took a look at a flip for an open house, and it was a good job, but it was just very basic. They had done, your Amazon, or maybe even like Home Depot, chrome hardware everywhere. They did very minimal, kind of cheap, basic looking countertops everywhere, very basic
Mm-hmm.
carpet. And there's really nothing wrong with the house. It looked clean and fine, but it didn't have any sort of personality. And that personality takes a little bit of time. It takes some knowledge, and it takes money. And you do a really good job of underwriting it in the first place in order to have a look that really does stand out. And I think it probably pays off in the end. So those are kind of like those are the basic takeaways of getting to walk a bunch of houses
Well,
with you lately.
it's awesome to hear it from that perspective, because that house we walked in Plano last week, when I've introduced you to a couple new restaurants this last week. So,
Yeah,
um,
Papacitos. What
but
was that other Mexican place by your
Oedes,
house?
Oedes,
Yeah, that place was great.
yeah. So before Oedes, we Ojedas, or however you want to pronounce it, but we looked at that house. Remember, that house was hammered. I mean, That house had everything you could possibly think of. And then one of the big things that we checked just because of the deferred maintenance, I was like, "Hey, Ashton, go look in the attic and look up there from underneath and see if there's still cedar shingles in
Yep.
the attic."
Yep.
And there was. And with roofs right now being such a big attention, and then seeing the cedar shake up there, you're like, "Oh crap," because
Yeah.
you can
That
add
was an
another 10
everything
grand to your
house.
roof bill. And that thing needed everything. I mean, it needed roof, it needed decking, right? Because of the cedar shake, it needed electrical. The foundation was in pretty bad shape. The plumbing was still cast iron, so we're pretty sure that was bad. There was a clean out on the kitchen side of the house that was knocked out, so they could just basically run their kitchen sink directly outside the
Into the
outside
yard.
wall.
Yeah.
Um, all of
In the
these
middle
things
of
we
Plano.
caught on that walkthrough, right? And of course,
Yeah.
the whole thing reeked of smoke. Um, it could be a cool house based on the floor plan, but it needed everything. So it needed AC system. It needed everything. So just adding up the big ticket items, the big structural things, foundation, plumbing, electrical, AC, roof, right, window. Getting into that, um, it was a
What were
hundred
you
grand
like,
right there.
60 a foot or something like that?
Yeah,
Somewhere in
so I
there.
think we rented at 70 or 75 a foot,
Hmm.
because, like I said, 100,000. I think it was 70 a foot because it was 2,000 square foot home. Pretty sure we said 140K.
Hmm.
So 100,000 of that was was structural or major crap, and then 40,000 of it would be cosmetics,
Hmm.
right? To make it look pretty. Um, so, anyways, I just got notice yesterday. She goes, "Hey, they told me to go to MLS with it. Went to MLS, ended up with 20 offers. They were listed at 325. She said they ended up getting full price,
Really? What did
with a
they? So
couple
what did they list it at?
325.
Oh, they listed at 325 and they got some. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, people are just crazy, man. I toss it up. Just people just don't have that experience. So it's like you said, people are so excited just to get an opportunity and a deal. And what was ARV on that thing? Like I think 450 is what we were saying.
I
450
would
was
have to look
ARV,
back, but
maybe.
that sounds about right. Where that was in Plano. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
right. So
So I mean,
someone's
they're
going to
like,
buy it for 325 and I mean, if you're an end user and you're a handyman and you can do some stuff and you have guys and friends, I guess, but
what's going to happen is they're going to skip a lot of steps. Like there's going to be a lot of things that they're not going to do because
yeah.
they don't know to do it, and it's going to come up on the backside.
Mm,
I mean, most likely. But this is a great conversation to lead in to exciting news. And another thing that I swear you said you were going to go up and do an Indian ritual dance for me up there in Aubrey because we
yep.
talked about that now the
We
last
spoke it
several
into
weeks.
you were getting negative last week and I said, "No, sir. No, sir. If I've learned one thing from you, you have to say good things are going to happen. It's going to sell."
Well,
And I had offered to go do an open house this weekend, but just that
we have
optimism of like,
hit
look,
a
we're going to do it.
record.
So,
We have hit a record for me in the last. It's been 6 years since I've had anything exceed this amount of days on market. So 6 years, and Aubrey did it for me. 47 days on market to get a contract. So
but what's crazy is that act we could do a real specific pull, but I bet that's still under the average for days on market in that area, maybe by a day or two. That's
yeah,
right
it,
at the
it
average.
it might be right now. It's like that just inventory keeps picking up, and
Yeah.
there's a bunch of junk. There's short sales up there now. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that's just, it's not it's not the primo stuff.
I didn't tell you this, but someone the other day I was in a meeting. They were not talking great about Aubrey. They're like, I'll,
Yeah.
I'll, that was Nisa, I think. And she was like, I'll do open houses. I'll sell. I'll do this. I'll go all the way up to the Oklahoma border, but I'm not messing with 380 and Preston and all that stuff. It's like
Yeah.
there's just some people that don't want to mess with it. And I think that's really kind of biting that little corner right now.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And that's been seen. And I was talking to a friend last night. And he's like, so Aubrey's off your list. I was like, pretty much, yeah. I mean, I took a risk with it. I felt like it was going to move pretty quick. Just it was going to be a quick deal. Now the reno was really quick, but going back to what you were saying before about you know just doing a house right, and I didn't do anything crazy with that home. In fact, the quartz that I put in that home, um, I found a quartz. It's a 3cm, and through my vendor, we get a really good price on this. So that was a really big kitchen with a huge island and big overhang. And I want to say turnkey installed was 4 grand, something like that for that kitchen. So it wasn't out of line. It was a lot of square footage. Um, and what else are you going to put in there, right? You're going to do a cheaper granite, it's like, what options do you really have, right?
Yeah.
So it looked really good. It's kind of a lower end quartz, but it's still quartz. And so I try to do things like that. Same thing with that LVP that's in there. It's 100% waterproof LVP. It's just a notch below on price than what I've been putting in some of my higher price point homes. Um, and so it's little tricks like that. It's things that you can do that
Well, and I'll tell you the
make a
difference between,
difference.
one big difference between yours and this one I was at the other day. Custom paint, a few ceilings or your urban bronze or whatever you're doing for that,
Yeah,
the kind of that look, a little bit darker. But you do that in your midterm rentals. Like you do that at your house. Like these are things that
yeah,
you do that you really like. The hardware is an
yeah,
upgraded hardware. And that looks really nice. You actually put in fans and you put in decent chandeliers over the kitchen nook, or like this house here they had completely scraped the ceilings and put in recessed literally everywhere. No fans,
mm,
no drop lighting anywhere. And actually someone pointed it out and they said, is this normal? Is it? I was like, it looks good, but it's just, there's nothing
yeah,
else. And I was trying to come up with an answer that didn't just completely put the blame on the builder being lazy, but I was like, yeah, I think, it really raises the ceiling, makes it look nice and tall and big, all that, but which it does, but it is way cheaper just to tell your guy like, hey, just can lights everywhere, go for it. And
mm-hmm,
so yeah, there's just little bitty things that really add up to making it feel like a move-in ready home. And so I can't imagine houses up there that are trying to, you have the stubborn seller that's like, nope, this thing's worth 380, just put it out on the
right,
market, and they're not doing a whole lot. They're not. So, knowing how
yeah.
much of a problem you had up there, but
But
yeah, I'm
I
glad
wanted to go back.
finally went under contract.
I want to, yes, we're very, very thankful for that. And it's supposed to be a pretty quick close. So, and it's a younger guy, but he's putting down, good chunk of money. He's putting 20% down. So, I mean, all that, is a pretty solid deal. So here's what I want to go back to on the underwriting part. You mentioned something earlier about kind of dumbing down the ARV. And, after we run it, I usually pad it a little bit between the ARV and the reno.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't do that, and I was still pretty skinny, this deal was not very fat to start, but it was a 2005 build. I'm like, this thing's not going to, cost me too much. And in fact, in the original idea, I was like, I could probably keep the showers as is. They were the plastic, fiberglass shower
Mm-hmm.
enclosures that every house has there. Um, but when I was basing it on that comp that I had, I just was like, let me do a step up based, a little bit better in that comp. And again, my idea was pricing at the same exact thing they did, and let it get bid up, because it listed for 350, sold for 359. So I started out at 350 in September. Mind you, and I want to say I was only going to make maybe 35,000 maybe, or something like that, was kind of what I was betting on, right? So it wasn't a big run. Um, but here's what happened. So renovation budget was 44,000. I took a risk. I knew that the roof may be an issue, but I took the risk and I took the roof out of my budget originally. So taking the roof out of my budget put me at 44,000 in renovation. all in now as of today, I'm $56,000 in, including a new roof. So when you think about that, it's a $12,000 increase, and then the roof cost me 11 grand and change, right? So essentially, the cost of the increase of my budget was the roof. So that's number one. So I had a push there where my budget ran, and then the other issue is I had to decrease the list price $15,000 to get an offer.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially 47 days later, right? So um, I'm gonna be in the green. I'm gonna make money on this deal. As of right now, knock on wood, if everything goes good with inspections and all that, which I can't see why they wouldn't. But it's good to be in the green. But if I didn't do those two things, if I didn't think about it logically in the beginning and have enough room in there to wiggle, and we talk about this all the time about not accepting a deal. Like if you like, there's flippers, there's investors out there all day. They go, I'll do it and make 20 grand, no problem. Like I'll do this deal. And they do it. Well, if they did it with that mindset that they would take that deal down to make 20 grand because it was an easy flip, 2005 build, etc., and they get squeezed like I did of $30,000 basically,
Yep.
or I guess a little bit less than that, 25, 30,000. They're upside down.
Yep.
It's that fast. It happens that quick. And then what happens is you get somebody that's ornery. It's like, no, I just have to wait for the right buyer. And then not to mention your interest, and I've
Yeah,
got
your holding
a
cost.
prime interest rate. So I think my interest rate now just fluctuated to like 8%. It was like 8.5, right? It follows the Fed. But you got people on hard money, 6-month terms, right? That are paying 12, 13, 14% plus, their fees on the front end. I mean, what a
Mm-hmm.
mess,
Yep.
So
But
it's
you do
just,
it the right
it's very
way.
important to
You do it the
know that,
sustainable way.
yeah. Well,
Like
thank
that.
you.
You're a professional, and you look at the big picture. You're not a. I'm sure there's times when you're like, look, I need to pick up a deal, but you don't have a full time crew, so it's not like they're on staff, and you just gotta. You don't want to keep them busy. You want to keep them around, but they know you. They've been
Yeah.
around long enough. And so you just kind of can trust, like, I'll find something, just keep looking, trust the process. And so you don't have to force things.
Right.
But it is interesting to see up close, because I'm sure there's some deals that I would have been like, yeah, let's just try this out. And I would have been that guy that was $15,000 more into it. And then if it goes well, then great. But if you get squeezed, it's a problem. And
I
so
mean,
that's
look,
definitely a big learning curve.
I'm a big advocate of failing forward. And I think taking action in any business steps to learn is
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
important,
for sure.
and we've talked about this in past deals that you had when we first met, when we first started the podcast, and your learning curves that you had, you know, um, and you reference it back to, man, okay, I lost 25 grand, but what an education I got, right?
Right.
And that's the positive way to look at it. And obviously, I've lost money in the past on other deals, and I've learned a lot. It doesn't feel good. You don't want to lose. You definitely don't go into a deal with that mentality.
Yeah.
Um, but you have to be able to absorb that loss, right? From a business perspective, if I did lose money on this deal, it doesn't cripple me. It
Right.
just changes my annual gross income on the business model to a little bit less because there's
Hmm.
enough positive income that it offsets that loss.
Yep.
It's not my one and only deal for the year, and so it's an absorption rate,
But if
right?
you're
When
doing
you
it,
think
if you're
about
doing it regularly, you're basically dollar cost averaging into your
right,
business. There will be a swing. There will be one where you hit it just before the upswing and you buffer it and it runs a little bit and you make a little bit extra money that you wouldn't have.
right,
So it kind of
exactly.
all kind of averages out with these ups and downs. So why don't we talk about a little bit of a market update? So speaking of days on market, we are right around 56 average for the MLS.
Ah,
We
we'll
up,
see.
up
Yeah, beat the average.
well,
47 days.
Denton County is 48. So you beat it by one day. You
There
beat
we
the
go.
average by one day. So good for you. We have let's see, month supply, we're at 4.6. Homes for sale, we are ticking down slightly. We're at 42.3. I need to talk to Tommy Flood over at our office because his numbers are a little different than mine, and he's the stats guy. I trust his numbers, so I want to get with him. I actually want him on
Okay.
the podcast because
All right. We'll get Tommy on.
he was great. I sat in on a class. I was blessed to be able to be a part of the top 20% at Keller Williams this last month. I got invited to, or maybe it was a quarter, I don't know. Got invited to a brunch, so I got to sit in with people that are doing good business, and Tommy gave the market report for them. And it was he also had a bunch of statistics from this research company that he pays for about how many people they surveyed 2,000 people, and how many of them know how much the realtor makes, how many of them agree with how much realtors make. It was really interesting. So he would be a great one to have on towards the end of the year,
Okay.
just to kind of give us a feel for what, from a numbers perspective, what people are thinking about, what the sentiment is, and what the actual whole market is. So yeah, let's work on that. Tommy, he did a great job on that deal there. So let me get over to the other dashboard. Let's see. We did not have quite as many price decreases. So we had 3,969 price decreases this last. We're under 4,000.
Okay.
So that is a slight decrease. So we were at 4,500, then 4,000, now 39 the last 3 weeks. And so, but still a lot happening out there for people panicking in a way. I was talking to a guy yesterday that they've been on the market 70 days and they've pulled the levers that they know how to pull, and it's basically price, and they've dropped, and the owner's like, I'm not dropping again. We'll take it off the market. So it's just unfortunate when you're a listing agent, and this guy's, he doesn't have a lot of deals under his belt, and this means a lot to him. And it's an $800,000 house. And so of course he's wanting it to work out, and they probably overpriced it maybe to begin with, but they're just chasing the market right now. And it's a bummer. It's just a kind of depressing place to be as a listing agent. And, there's only so many things you can do. There's only so many open houses and social posts. And, once you get past that, certain days, it's like, look, this is a price thing. And whether you want to drop it in order to sell it, that's a personal decision. And if you want to pull it off, I understand. I hope you use me on the backside. But right now,
are they living there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right now,
I mean,
the market is saying
if you're
it's not
living
worth
there,
this.
it's almost beneficial. Take it off, let it rest 30 days,
Yeah.
and then go back with the price reduction, because at this point you end up getting that stagnant. And I was in that mindset when I looked at like the Aubrey house. Is like, okay, every week I was just doing a little dollar drop to where at least I stood out on 30, 40 properties that were available in that subdivision. Because they just kind of get mixed in there. So like if you're a buyer, you've seen it before. Like if my listing pops up, you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I've seen that one. Let me show it over here, or I've seen it on
It's
Zillow
very
or
easy to
whatever.
do that. So
So it's like, what are you doing to stand out? If you just do a price reduction, you've been on the market for 200 days. It's like, okay, what's wrong with the house,
right. What are
right?
you
It's
hiding?
always been that stigma. So
Yep.
if you take it off, reset, you know, stage it, spend the money. I mean, and that was the biggest thing. A number one question I got asked on Aubrey, is it staged? I'm like, yep.
Hmm.
We staged it from the beginning, and
What are you
people
doing
ask me,
wrong?
I've had a lot of flippers and a lot of investors recently ask me, you stage your house? Why do you do that? Like, it was funny that the joke was on Verlaine, because Verlaine was like 1,100 square feet. And the agent that referred me the deal, when I told him, I said, hey, because he had a buyer, and he goes, hey, I've got a buyer wants to buy it. And I was like, well, if you bring me a deal right now at this number this weekend, then we'll do the deal and I'll cancel staging. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I already paid for staging,
Yeah.
and they're staging on this coming Tuesday. And he goes, staging? What are you going to stage in there? It's only 1,100 feet.
Yeah.
It's like,
It
if
makes it
we're going
look
to stage it
better.
because it's 1,100 feet, it's really important to stage it, because
Yeah.
people will get caught up on the square footage and not know how it
Can I
lays
even
out.
fit a
So
couch right here? Can I fit a full size bed
exactly.
right here? Yeah, for
Yep.
sure. So, all right, let's talk about a little bit of news. So, well, this isn't necessarily news, but I did want to say, I have this tab open. and this I guess goes a little bit with market. I wanted to mention this,
Okay.
but news to me. Let's put it that way. News to me. Our Keller Williams office is one of the biggest Keller Williams offices in the country. I'm sure, definitely in the area. Is it private collection? Is that specific to our market center? Or is that a whole Go Network thing?
It's a good question.
Well,
Good
either
question.
way, private collection.
I think it might be a Go Network deal, but
Yeah. Well, private collection, I had heard the term, but now I'm going to these classes and going to coaching. I'm really getting into the groove of a KW, meeting some really
yeah,
great people. I've got a lot of momentum going. I will show this book, 12-week year.
great book.
Great book. I could barely put it down last night. I did put it down, but I had a harder time putting it down than some other books.
So real quick, the synopsis of that book is what? If you want to just summarize it real quick.
So the synopsis
for our
of the book,
listeners.
the idea of the book is most of us operate on this concept of annual goals, yearly goals. And when you're early on, you have some energy and then it kind of fades. But then right towards the end of the year, you really kick it into gear because I want to meet some goals. And they basically just shorten the cycle. And so they're doing 4 of those cycles during the year.
Quarterly goals.
Yep, quarterly goals. And they just call it 12-week year. And so,
Yep.
they have some different ways of actually structuring your quarterly and annual, but it's just the way they put it. And there's a lot of some cool motivational stuff. It's a short book. I don't know. It's kind of speaking my language right now in the place I am, and some just different personal things. So anyway,
Perfect.
I say all that to say is they've been mentioning that book in our coaching class. I picked it up, reading it. The other thing about our office, we have this thing called private collection. And this ties into news in that I think that more and more agencies and brokerages with the MLS upheaval and the agent upheaval, pocket listings are going to become more and more of a thing because certain MLSs, I think there's going to be brokers who just they don't participate. And this is happening up in Colorado. There's certain brokerages that are not participating in the MLS up there. Utah, there's some pushback on those. So that might actually grow, and these big offices that have these pocket listings could become a real asset. And so I logged into private collection for the first time this last weekend. Man, it's really cool. Basically what it is it's a Zillow for pocket listings just for our office. And you can go through there, and it's a cool asset for clients because especially on the buyer's end, it's like, hey, do you want to see a whole chunk of houses that nobody knows are for sale right now? And you can go and look at these, and people put things on private collection for all sorts of reasons. Maybe they want to test a price out for a few weeks before they put it on the MLS. Maybe they don't want their neighbors to know they're selling or their family to know they're selling. They're just trying to do it kind of quietly. There's just reasons that they want to put it on here. But so yeah, that ties into news. I was really impressed with private collection and looking through there. And actually I saw something that might work for Allie. So I'm going to try to reach out to her and see if she's interested. So also in the news, so DFW, according to the 2025 Emerging Trends in Real Estate Report, DFW was ranked as the #1 potential market for real estate in 2025. That's had that position in 2019. It lost it for a few years, and now experts rank DFW #1 for real estate potential, according to the Dallas Business Journal. So that's cool to be in the heart of what experts are considering to be a hot market. I'm sure they look at the commercial and the multifamily and residential, all the things, but there's things that could be better, but all in all, we live in a great part of the country and a great economy, and policy is in place to help us out as investors and all that. So always cool to see that.
Yep, absolutely.
So another article from the Dallas Business Journal is talking about the crazy amenities that are coming into these master plan communities. I think we've mentioned this a few times, just maybe a one-off neighborhood, but it said that some neighborhood, they have zip lines. They've got these lagoons, like huge lazy river lagoon, like not just a community pool anymore.
Wow.
These huge lagoons around.
Do you think they really get used? I mean, to some degree.
I don't know. That's what I was going to say.
I've had people that have community pools, and they're just adamant about having their own pool in their backyard. It's like,
we have a nice community pool. We've been there a few times, but our friends have we have access to a pool now that's close, obviously. So we don't go, but they have a clubhouse, and I think we've used it for one birthday party or something since we've lived here. It definitely looks nice. It's one of those things that looks cool in a promo video, and it's sort of a sales pitch. I mean, it definitely runs up our HOA. Our HOA has gone up every year, and a lot of that has to do with the maintenance of the pool and the clubhouse and the grounds around that. So, I don't know. Like, that's what I was going to say is how I, this with the apartments and the community co-working spaces, they have all these features, and at the end of the day, is it mostly for Instagram and for the promo video, or I wonder if people are actually now walking trails, parks. I do think that those get used just real, regularly, but
Hmm.
fancy zip lines and weird, I don't know, pickleball or paddleball setups. That seems like a lot of expense, and it might just be for looks, in my opinion. I may be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. That again, it's one of those things. It's like, is it something that somebody looks at and they get excited about it first? Like, Tabitha really wants an above ground spa at our home, and she wanted one that actually built into the pool. But the more that I've talked to other friends that have the above ground, they're like, just you go the above ground, you don't have to worry about waiting a long time to heat it up. There's
Yeah.
a lot of different
A lot more
benefactors, right?
jets. Yeah.
But I'm like, are we really going to use it? Like, I think it's something that you might get into and enjoy when it's new. But then, I mean, how many houses have you been into, or I've bought several houses that have spas that have just sat there and rotted out? Like,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a nuisance. Like, okay, now I got to spend money to haul this thing off.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but
if you
here's
remember that
how
house
much
in
is it?
Wiley
How much
had
is a
one,
spa? How
and
much is it? 3 grand
they're
or
up to,
something?
no, that they used to be. Now they're like 10 grand. They're stupid.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. Tabitha's been good to you. Okay. I'm taking the protagonist right here. All right. And this is like 2 trips. Y'all take a lot of nice trips, right?
Well,
So
yes,
the
but
cost of 2 trips that y'all are going to go somewhere, would y'all get 2 trips of enjoyment out of the hot tub over the
okay, she
next
can't
five
listen to this
years?
episode.
You know?
No, no. The funny thing is, my thought is, are we actually going to use it? Like it, and I think possibly, but the offset, like, we're most likely not going to use it in the summertime at all, right? Um, you might use it in the winter here and there, but ideally, I mean, we go to the lake so much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we rarely use the pool. I think we got it in the pool twice this summer.
Did y'all ever use
Uh,
Casey and Jared's hot tub on top of the houseboat?
we have, I mean, a couple times, but it's not a frequent. It's not a frequent deal.
Maybe just pay to
Like,
upgrade theirs. Maybe just maybe you're just like, hey, there's going to be a crane here tomorrow. Just don't worry about it. Like
yeah,
we're
that's my thoughts. Right? We just use Casey Jared's hot
yeah.
tub. I mean,
I don't
it
know. I
it,
think you
ha-
should
it
take.
has
I'm going to take
happened.
up for Tabitha. Just buy her something nice,
I
Tavis.
don't know.
Just
I kind of thought that, if I was gonna put anything out there, maybe I'll put a sauna out there.
hey,
But
okay. Now sauna and an ice tub. Now that's what I
yeah,
want. That's what I want to waste my money on that I won't use very much is a
although I
sauna
did
and an
I
ice
did
bath.
jump in the pool this morning, and I've had this mindset of like, I don't need a cold tub or a cold plunge. I'll just get in the pool when it's 40 degrees outside, and
Yeah.
sit in the
Yeah.
pool. And I think I've done it maybe once or twice.
Well,
And
it's not 40
fortunately,
yet. I mean, your
I
pool, what
have
is it,
a
like low 60s right
no.
now?
It's 70. Yeah. So I got in this morning because the basketball goal that we had on the side of the pool blew in with all this wind.
Oh, yeah.
So actually, Tabitha got in, and then there was like a piece of metal left in the pool. So I jumped in to get it out.
Yeah.
Of course, as soon as I go in, I turn back behind me, and Chip, our youngest dog, our Labradoodle, decides Daddy's getting in, so he
It's
jumps in the
time.
pool, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, now I got a wet dog.
Yeah.
But I go and get the little metal out, and I'm in there, and it's chilly. I mean,
Yeah.
I was like, it's only 70 degrees, and I'm like
Yeah. Can you
thinking,
imagine an
okay,
ice bath
you
that they
really
get
have to
down?
be in the right mindset to jump in the
Yeah.
pool
They'll
when the
advertise them. They'll
water's
chill down
40
to
degrees.
39. Yeah. 39, 40. So I would
Yeah.
actually, I think, enjoy that. So, okay. Sad news in the world of the real estate heavyweights. You took me to a few new restaurants the other day, but we may need to rush out because another one of our friends, our staples, is closing 50 restaurants. It's
Oh
a
no.
Dallas-based group, and sad news that 50 TGI Fridays will be closing.
Oh,
And actually, they only have 213, so it's
that
not like
doesn't
there's 1,000 or 2,000 of these
doesn't
things.
surprise me. Like I as a kid, TGI Fridays was really cool because like I I think I had a friend whose dad was an attorney and represented TGI Fridays because that seemed to be the place that he always took us when
Yeah.
it was his dad's weekend, and dad would take us, TGI Fridays. But I always remember getting like a burger and then getting a shake. Like
Mm,
at the time, that was like the shake place,
yeah.
like if you
Yeah.
wanted, you wanted a meal and a shake, like that was a place, and they really pushed that for many, many years. Um, and then it just lost its luster. Like, I
Yep.
mean, it used to be the one in Plano until it closed down.
Yeah.
Used to be one of the only places you could get into after like 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. Especially post COVID, like everything started shutting down early.
The one there by
You know,
REI.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so now
I
it's
never
something
went to
else.
that
I
one,
haven't
but
even seen what it turned into now. But
yeah, I mean, it's obviously kind of like a Chili's restaurant. And for some reason, I always think of TGI Fridays. I think of appetizers. I couldn't name like one meal,
no,
but
that's kind of what they were. Yeah,
yeah,
it had
drinks,
more of
appetizers,
that.
happy hour.
I
So
mean, they had all the bourbon glaze
yeah,
stuff,
yeah,
like the bourbon glazed salmon and the bourbon glazed chicken and stuff like that.
yeah. So, bummer for our friends that are in Dallas that are having to close some restaurants. It says they're probably filing bankruptcy and going to restructure at some point. Buca de Beppo, I guess, did this. They mentioned Buca de Beppo in there, which
Mm,
again, I guess one underlying theme between Buca de Beppo and TGI Fridays, and then the Red Lobster, but Red Lobster a little bit, but Buca and TGI, they spend a lot of money on decor. They may have to dumb down the decor
hmm.
budget and just go with let's concentrate on food,
Yeah,
because those places have got all sorts of stuff just
Buka's
hanging from the
cool
wall.
though. I mean, Buka's cool for a family. It's not really,
Yeah.
like
So
a
the last time
one-off
we
thing
went, we
that
had
you're
some
just
friends.
craving, but it is cool
No.
for like a family event.
Yeah, we went there actually as we had some friends take us there, and it was neat. It's not one of those places that I think about going, but when we went, it is different, and it was creepy in that I think we were one of two
Oh,
tables
did you?
in the whole restaurant that
Oh,
were
I was
there.
gonna
It was
say,
just
did you sit at the brown table with the head in the middle of
no, I know what you're talking about.
it?
No, it was not an off night really. It was not a it should have been fairly busy, and I'm telling you, we were one of two tables in the whole restaurant.
Wow,
So
wow.
that's a little different. Um, okay, so why don't you open up your email? I
Okay,
This is our favorite news section is the MLS that we're checking out. So I emailed Tavis a a few listings here. One of them
okay.
he's going to absolutely love.
Got the first one.
Okay,
This is
open
the
up
one
number
on
two.
open up
Yeah,
number two, not number one.
yeah, open up number two.
Okay.
Let's see here.
It looks like it's the same house. Did you send me two emails?
That's weird. It gives you two different links. Okay, we'll open up that one. Is this the one that's on 6715 Joyce Way?
Yes.
Okay, well we'll talk about this one. We'll save the
Okay.
other one for next week cuz this was the good one of the week. The other one not so much. the, the other one I found was it was $10 million in atrocious. So I will forward that to you, and it is god awful. Okay, so but let's talk about this because when I saw this house, and again, I'll try to link this, but we are at um, what is the address? 6715 Joyce Way in Dallas,
Yep.
and I saw this. I'm like, man, this is Tavis's house. This I could see Tavis either designing this house or living in this house because now correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably not an original mid-century, but this is a new designed mid-century themed house. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's got some elements in there that, in fact, they mention that, and it's one of those things that, like purists will say, And I've even had this on my properties when they resell, and people are like, mid-century house, and I'm like, it's not a mid-century home. Like it's a
Yeah.
mid-century inspired, or
Hmm.
mid-century modern inspired home,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's definitely not a mid-century modern house because it was built a couple years ago.
Right.
Um, but no, this one it has the vibes to some degree. It's kind of a warm contemporary. Um,
So I was gonna
it
say, like, if you were doing this house, this is what I want to
yeah,
ask you. If you were doing this house, what would you have done differently? Just to kind of, if you're not going to look it up, to paint the picture,
sure.
this, I think this is in Highland Park area. Beautiful home, larger scale. So typically mid-century is going to be a much smaller scale, shorter windows, shorter roof line, shorter ceilings. They have built this to be more of a modern, 10, 11-foot ceilings,
Hmm.
large windows, large door, but they're using your color palette, your more of your nature inspired color palette, a lot
Sure.
of your walnut and
Yeah,
some
they got the
cedar.
dark painted inset ceiling. They got
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like you got a very light colored, probably red oak floor. The kitchen I love though, and I, I know Walter. They did. Is it white oak or did they do walnut fronted
walnut.
cabinets?
Yeah,
So this kitchen, do you think that this is walnut or I'm trying
let
to
me get back to it.
tell.
I love the bar too. The bar with the brass and the glass floating shells. We just rendered a design like that. And that's pretty cool.
The wine,
Uh,
the wine area, or
the bar area.
oh,
You
I
see
see
the
it. Yeah,
wine
yeah, yeah,
room, but
yeah,
then
yeah,
there's
yep, yep. Kind of the brushed
so
gold floating
that
shelves. That's really cool.
those cabinets. My
Like white
phone
oak. I
is
know the
not
bathrooms are
cooperating with
white
me.
oak, but I think, like the master closet is walnut, and I believe the
It's hard
kitchen
to
might be
tell from the
walnut.
pictures. It does look. Uh,
Oh, that's white oak.
yeah, it's oak. It's white oak.
But anyway,
Um,
I mean, I personally
I
love
love
the
the
black
Ventahood
framed
though. They
windows.
they did good. They did a good job with the Ventahood design. That's definitely got a mid-century vibe to it.
Yeah. The back porch is
Um,
cool. They've got four skylights that are kind of designed into the back porch, which gives just a lot of
yep,
natural light. Another feature that I like on some of these houses, and we've seen on the home tour, is they're fairly narrow from at least one point. A lot of times, from the entrance to the back door,
hmm,
maybe even like Aaron's, not quite, but you can see a lot of light from going from the front of the house to the back of the house, and so that entry in the foyer really opens up, gives a lot of natural light, which so mid-century, true mid-century is like natural light. Is that a huge part of it? Because they are
it
shorter and
is.
kind of
Yeah.
smaller, but they try to really go with natural light?
Yes, a lot of the elements of mid-century modern design were very simple, simplistic lines, simplistic, clean lines, and a blend between the inside and the outside. So,
Yeah,
like basically, where your living spaces outside were incorporated into the inside by through glass, right? So,
yeah,
like a lot of times you have courtyards, and you might enter through a main courtyard, and then um, it continues into the house. But from when you're inside the home, you can see into the courtyard, and so it kind of makes that space incorporated into the home, and it makes the home feel much larger, even though it's not as large as it is. Like the houses that I built in Little Forest Hills, for instance, were like on average 2,500 square feet. When you walked them, they felt like they were 3,500 square feet,
yeah.
right? Because the amount of glass and being able to see from one part to the other and see through the home, but also incorporate, the different elements of natural light coming in and the courtyards and things like that.
Yeah.
And this home does have a courtyard incorporated into it.
So
Um,
I'm getting the impression that for whatever it is, 6 million, you're not in, but and you may have designed it differently, but I do like this design a lot. It's not overly modern, it's not overly ornate. It's kind
yeah,
of a good
they
marriage,
did a
I think.
really they did a really good job. There's a few things, you know. if I'm gonna kind of get into, hey, you want a mid-century modern designed home, there's a few elements in here that I would have changed, that would have made it a little bit more conducive to some of the original architectural lines. And for instance, like these big tall ceilings that are 2-story tall and things like that, you wouldn't find as much
Yeah, for sure.
in that design. The other part about it is the roof line from the beginning, from the curb appeal. It has a lot going on. It's very busy. Um, and there's some elements to it that are cool, but it's very busy. It's not simple and clean and simplistic.
Right, I could see that.
There's a lot of roof changes in here versus kind of trying to dummy it down a little bit. So
yeah, lower profile. Well, cool. I wanted to point that out. I'll find the crappy one and we'll talk about it next time. We missed an opportunity. I couldn't have gone during these days, but we missed the AIA tour of homes. Have you ever done that?
Oh gosh, yeah, I have. It's usually
It was last weekend. Was
it?
And I saw it.
I was out of town, so I couldn't.
And I couldn't have gone. That's why. So anyway, we'll have to keep an eye out. There's other home tours, and I know you do the mid-century one. But there's other home tours. I really want to keep an eye on that. Maybe go. Maybe it was this one that I looked at that was pretty freaking expensive. There was one I looked at, like, I'm good. But looking at the brochure of this one, there are some really pretty houses. So AIA we'll have to try out next time. So, well, that does it for today's show. This is what we do every Friday: market update, a little bit of news, talk about a crazy house, and then intermittently we talk about what's happening in our business, learning how to buy and sell homes with clients all over DFW as the full-time realtor that I am, as I came out of a 9-to-5 job and I'm trying to figure out my way there. Tavis is steady flipping houses, steady figuring out how to fill up his midterm rentals, and we try to talk about that. So thank you so much for all of you that have tuned in and that have shared love by subscribing, and you get all of our episodes, and that you have passed this on to somebody else and told them about it. We have gotten some really good feedback lately, and it's always really is nice. I say we love you forever for it, but honestly, it's nice to hear. So if you ever have any tips or you want us to touch on something, we would for sure love that feedback, and we will incorporate it into the show. And until next time, I hope you have a great day.